Today we are talking to Joby Wood. He's a British game developer and graphic designer who has been working in the video game industry since the late 80s. He started out as a pixel artist on home computers such as Commodore Amiga, Atari ST, and worked on early titles such Battle Valley and others. In the 90s, he was involved in games like Dizzy and Tempest 2000, and later he worked as a level designer on Tomb Raider games. Welcome to our podcast. Hi, Joby. Do you remember your first contact to computer games?
Yeah, God, I remember my stepdad, when I was a child, bought the ZX Spectrum, so that'd be the first computer that we owned. And then I think we had an Atari 2600 console after that. So that was going back quite a while. I was born in 72, so I must have been about maybe 9 or 10 at that time. So it would be kind of like early 80s, very early 80s, I think. And then after that, kind of progressed, had a BBC Micro for a while, and then finally got the Atari ST, which was when sort of the games started to get really interesting, I think. Although the BBC had some good games on it as well.
Do you remember the games you played at that early days, the first games you saw?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that Spectrum was kind of like Horoscope Skiing and Manic Miner, games like that. And then the BBC, there was quite a few decent games. That was when I first started kind of messing around with programming as well. I didn't really do much of that on the Spectrum. But with the BBC, I was trying out the BBC Basic, and there was quite a few good games on that as well. I remember, was it Joust was a good game, and Super Sprint as well was a good game. Some of the arcade conversions on the B were actually really quite good. Then obviously it kind of like the Atari ST and the Commodore 64. That was when things started to get really interesting gaming wise.
Did you only play or did you try to program something at the days?
Yeah, I was programming on the BBC, but only in BASIC. I was kind of like doing programs. Obviously, I was buying all the magazines like Crash and Zap, and kind of the BBC Micro ones as well. And some of those have programs in BASIC, so I was trying out those. Obviously, in my youth, and kind of messing around with a bit of pixel art then as well. And then kind of like, I made some friends. I grew up in Bristol, which is obviously famous for Banksy and stuff like that, and Bristol City Centre had quite a few decent computer shops. And so I used to go around at the weekends. I'd go down there and kind of like hang around the computer shops and look at all the games and the demos of the games and stuff. And I gradually made a few friends. So I met my sort of friend Derek Gilchrist, who was a programmer at the time. And then kind of like we decided at that point that he was going to be the programmer because those were his main skills, and I was going to be an artist. So that was kind of when we first started into making demos and things like that. I think he had an Amiga, I had an Atari ST. The demos that we were making were mainly on the Amiga at the time.
Did your environment, your family, your friends understand what you were doing on this computer at that early days?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's going towards the end of school and so doing my GCSEs and things like that, and kind of a lot of people were deciding whether or not they were going to do their A levels and or go to college and things like that. Obviously, I kind of made these friends involved in the computer scene, the demo scene, and stuff like that. So after I had to have a bit of a difficult conversation with parents to say that basically I decided I was just going to concentrate on doing the computer stuff and not kind of do A levels, things like that. And so it's kind of like a tough time, but in the end, things worked out. But it wasn't easy going to begin with, for sure.
And how did you originally get into the video game industry? Was there a specific moment or influence that let you become a game developer?
So me and my friend Derek, who I met, so I guess I was about 14 when I met him. We were kind of doing demos on Amiga and stuff like that. And we made a few friends in a computer shop called Broadway Computer Centre. We used to hang around in there, and kind of like there were a few computer groups around who would do demos and stuff like that. So we met a few people through them, and eventually we were kind of persuaded to start showing the demos that we made to some computer games companies. So we remember we took a trip from Bristol to Leamington Spa to go and see Codemasters, and we showed them the demos that we've been working on. We were kind of like pushing to try and basically get a contract to make a game, like whether it was a football game or a driving game, original games mainly. But in the end, we were offered conversions. So I think we did like a conversion. There's a game called Battle Valley.
Yeah. I that was one of the first projects I read. You did the graphics for it. Can you tell us how you did the graphics? Did you use tools at that days, or have you own tools or tools from the companies? How did you do the graphics?
Okay, sure. So Battle Valley to begin with was a Commodore C64 game, I think, for Houston. And then we were asked to do the Amiga conversion. So basically did the Amiga conversion for that. And I think I used, what was it? No, it's Degas Elite on the Atari ST. I can't remember what the Deluxe Paint was it? Deluxe Paint on the Commodore Amiga, I think, yeah. So if I was doing the graphics on the ST, it would have been Degas Elite. And then on the the Amiga, it would have been Deluxe Paint. So obviously, I did the graphics for that, and Derek did the programming. And I remember that project took about 6 months, I think, from start to finish, which, because we were young, seemed like an eternity. And it was a stressful project. I remember Derek was struggling to get it done. But I mean, looking at it now, it is quite a small project. There's only really one level, even though it's a big level. Um, but it was kind of like our first game that we made, and there were a few hurdles for us to deal with. Thankfully, Derek had a few programming friends who were able to help him out, and I think I had the easier time of it on that project because obviously I think graphics were a bit simpler to do than the programming at that time.
You did graphics later for a pub trivia simulator too. Was it easy for you to do graphics for all sort of games, or
Yeah, I mean, Pub Trivia, again, that was a conversion, I think. So the game was already been made. So we were given, Codemasters gave us what they already had. I can't remember what the original format was for that game. But basically, I was given the graphics, I think it was conversion from the Spectrum. So I was given the graphics that they had from the Spectrum, and then basically just had to kind of like add colors to them or increase resolution, make them look a bit nicer. So it wasn't kind of like starting from scratch. Obviously, doing a conversion is a much easier job than making an original game because they've already, the game is already there. And they can give you whatever they've got already, graphics wise. And so, I mean, but as an introduction to making games, it's an ideal start, really.
in the early 90s you worked on the cult classic Fantastic Adventures of Dizzy. How were you involved in this project, and what did you contribute to the Amiga and Sega Genesis versions?
Okay. Well, Derek, at that time, Derek had gone on he had a proper job at Codemasters. So I think I ended up going to Farron for a while, working with images on Llama's app with Jeff Minter. And Derek had gone to Codemasters and he was doing games with them. And then I kind of came up to the end of doing Llama's app. And Derek said that he needed an artist in Leamington to work on Fantastic Dizzy with him because he was doing a conversion for that. I think he did the Amiga version and the Mega Drive version. I think it was the Mega Drive version that we were working on, or I think we did a bit of both. But again, that was a conversion from the original game, which had obviously been developed by the Oliver twins. Again, it's a long time ago. I can't remember exactly which platform they developed. So it might have been the SNES, probably the Super Nintendo version that we were converting over then. So I just joined Derek then at the tail end of that project. So I had to basically finish off. He had an artist called Lee Christian who he'd worked with on a game called Yogi Bear, and I think he was working with him, but they kind of like drifted apart, kind of like halfway through the project. So basically, he called me in to finish a job, help finish a job. So.
Tempest 2000 on the Atari Jaguar is now considered as a classic on the system. How did you come to be involved in this project, and what did you learn from it? Especially the Jaguar had a quite unique and difficult hardware.
Yeah. So when I was growing up in school, I remember obviously when we had the Commodore 64 and stuff, Jeff Minter was a very well-known programmer. He did games like Sheep in Space and various other ones. So when I got the chance to work with him, obviously I jumped at the chance. Derek was working at Codemasters, and I got a call from Carl Jeffries at Images, who basically said, they've got a contract, and would I be interested in working on it? So I said, yeah, that sounds fine by me. I knew who Jeff was. So I ended up going to Wales and kind of stayed with Jeff for a couple of weeks in his cottage, and we went over that was Tempest 2000. So obviously I did Lama's Act before that, and then Tempest 2000 was the project after that. So Jeff was happy with the work that I did on Lama's App, and so I think it was a couple of months after that project finished, he got in touch saying that Atari was interested in getting Tempest 2000 done for the Jaguar. And so I remember going to his cottage in Wales, and he was kind of like had all the kit there, and he was messing around with it. And when I saw everything they had going with the Starfield and everything and the effects of that, I was really impressed, and I could tell pretty much straight away that it was going to be a big hit. So graphics again, bitmap graphics. He just kind of like wanted Legos and things like that. So graphics wise, there wasn't a huge amount of graphics that needed to be done on that project. It was mainly obviously Jeff's kind of like expertise and his kind of like psychedelic nature, I guess. He really, it was his programming and the game itself that made it a classic game. But I like to think that graphics fitted the game quite well. So it's mainly like fonts. It's mainly the experience that I got from the demo scene, the Amiga demo scene of doing fonts and logos and things like that, that I kind of helped me to do the graphics for Tempest 2000. But thankfully, it was very well received.
You mentioned Jogi Beer from 1994. What was it like working on a licensed game featuring a well-known cartoon character compared to original titles? Were there requirements or restrictions while doing this?
The Yogi Bear, I didn't work on that one. That was a game that was done by Lee Christian. So Lee Christian was the artist who was working on with Derek on the Dizzy game. So Dizzy again, Dizzy and Yogi, I think they kind of got a cartoony style. So he was kind of the main artist that Derek was working with at that time, but they kind of like drifted apart halfway through the Dizzy game. And basically that's when I was kind of like drafted in to work with that as well, because obviously Dizzy was quite a cartoony character and had a certain style that, so I had to kind of stick with the graphical style of it. But I think in the end, it did quite well. And after that, we did the Amiga version as well. So we did the conversion from the Mega Drive to the Amiga, and that went pretty well as well, because that had a parallax feel. So I remember Derek had quite a few challenges to work through on that one.
What was Llama Zap for the Atari ST? I don't remember this game.
Yeah, that was the first game I did with Jeff, and that was kind of like a sideways scrolling shooter game. And basically, it was kind of like, I guess, a bit like R-Type. If you remember R-Type in the arcades, when Jeff was going for, so he had a ship that you could do power-ups and things like that. And again, it's kind of like Beastie. Beastie's, so the theme was like a Beastie things had big camels and sheep and things like that. And it was just similar, I guess, to Sheep in Space, with the parallax had kind of like top and bottom layer parallax and several different levels with, I mean, it's just Jeff being Jeff, and he went all out on that one. But again, I think the Falcon, it wasn't a huge success. And the Tempest, the Jaguar as well. It's kind of like, it was a struggle, I think, for Atari then with their computers and consoles. But, they were quite well received and they did get quite a bit of attention. So
You did graphics for a lot of systems, Atari, Amiga, Genesis, and later you worked for DOS and Sega, for example, for the game BC Racers. Was it easy to do graphics for different systems? Did you convert them, or how did you switch between the versions?
Um, so mainly, I think the graphics I did for Llama's app and Tempest 2000, I was just using a PC to do that. So I was actually doing the graphics on a PC. Obviously, we all use PCs these days for everything. But back then, it was kind of like switching between the Atari ST or the Amiga or PCs. I remember at the time thinking, oh, PCs aren't that great compared to the Amiga or the SC. But yeah, I was kind of towards the end of working at Images. They said, PCs are the way to go, and we should all get used to working with PCs and stuff. But because I was obviously used to working with the Atari ST or the Amiga, it was something I wasn't really keen on doing. But so I bought my first PC at the end of working with Images. But there was, I mean, obviously working with consoles and things like that, was a lot of compatibility problems. People having to work with different formats, things like that. Things are a bit easier these days, I think, a bit more streamlined. But yeah, back then it was all quite a bit of a challenge.
You joined Core Design in the mid-90s. How did you end up moving to Core, and what were your first tasks there?
Yeah, so we ended up, we were obviously, myself and Derek, we were both working for Codemasters in Leamington Spa, and we just come to the end of the Dizzy game, and we were kind of like stuck in a bit of we weren't really sure what our next project was going to be. So there was a game called Captain Dynamo that we looked at doing for a while, so we started doing some of that. Again, that was a conversion. And we had a few friends from Derby who were working for Core Design, and so we met up with a few of them, and they said, because we're basically just doing contract work, so like freelance work at the time for Codemasters. And they said, oh, we can get you an employed job at Core Design. So I think myself and Derek, we were just a bit fed up with being stuck in kind of like limbo and not really knowing what we were doing. So in the end, we decided to take the plunge and move to Derby and start with Core Design. And then my first I think my first game with Core was the BC Racers, which again, that was Toby Gard, which is the creator of Tomb Raider. That was his game. He was working on the creator of Lara Croft and Tomb Raider, and he basically they wanted it converting, so it's basically an enhancement job on the graphics, basically just adding more colors and stuff like that. So again, I can't remember exactly which. I think there was a console called I can't remember the name of the console, 3DO or something like that. And yeah, the 3DO. And then so he did it on that. And then I think I was in charge, I had to do the PC conversion or something. So it was just basically adding more colors to the backgrounds and stuff like that. That's what I did for that job. So, but yeah, that was a really interesting time because that was when, we actually finally got ourselves into paid work, and Core was a big company, so we were working in house. Whereas before we weren't working in house, we were working from home mainly doing conversion jobs, and so we finally got to work in house and actually on a proper wage and everything.
You did level design for games there too, for example, for Ninja Shadow of Darkness and later Tomb Raider. Was it easy for you to do level design because it's not the same as doing artwork only?
Yeah, so before that, it was kind of like bitmap work, and there was obviously a few bits and jobs with level design and kind of making block art. Whereas you knew the graphics were going to be used for level design, so you make the block art and then create the levels. And so it was kind of like progression. Ninja Shadow of Darkness was our first real test, I think, because it was like a 3D game, which is obviously something new. And it was an original game as well. So it was a big jump from what we had been working on previously. And kind of like Derek and I came up with the idea to begin with, and then Derek actually left the team, and we were working with a few other guys, a couple of Danish guys called Brian and Martin. And so Brian had experience with 3D, and that's when we started looking at 3D. So I was given a copy of 3D Studio on the PC, and we started kind of looking into the game eventually came out on the PlayStation, but it was originally intended for the Sega Saturn, I think. But that version ended up being dropped in favor of the PlayStation, basically just because Dan was the programmer who came on towards the end of the project, and we decided it just needed PlayStation had just a bit more extra power, and we just wanted to be able to get a bit more out of the project. But it was a long project; it took about 4 years, I think, to get that project from start to finish. So obviously, compared to our first game, Battle Valley, which took 6 months but seemed forever at the time. 4 years, spending 4 years on a game. I mean, that was a real slog, and but we did get through it in the end, thankfully. And the game, I think is quite a decent game for PlayStation. But at that time, kind of like Core, they got Tomb Raider in the bag, and so they'd made like the first game. I think the first Tomb Raider 1 and Tomb Raider 2 had been finished by the time we actually finished Ninja Shadow of Darkness. So they kind of like knew that they had a hill in their hands, and they were putting everything into Tomb Raider. So we kind of got left by the wayside a bit. But thankfully the project didn't get canned, and we were able to get it finished. And it is actually quite a decent game. I think quite a few people who played it do think it's an enjoyable experience.
You were a level designer for some Tomb Raider games, we said, Last Revelation and Chronicles, for example. How was it for you to work or to help to develop such a famous series featuring Lara Croft?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, kind of been while we were working in the office on Ninja Shadow of Darkness, there was obviously this kind of buzz was all building about the Tomb Raider series, and didn't really realize at that time what a big success it had been, how incredibly well received it had been. But in the end, we were able to finish Ninja, and then I got asked by Jeremy Smith, obviously was the boss at Core, if we could do level design for Tomb Raider. I think that they were on so it was Tomb Raider 4, they just finished Tomb Raider 3, and then it's Tomb Raider 4 that they drafted us on. Because people kind of got drafted onto the project, and then people would say, oh, they don't want to work on it any longer or whatever. So there's kind of like a cycle of people. So I think I ended up being one of about 4 or 5 different level designers on that project. So it's Tomb Raider, Last Revelation, which was based in Egypt, and each level designer had their own section to work on. So it's quite good. We were all stuck in a room together, and we all had each other to kind of bounce off. And a couple of the guys, Richard and Pete and Jamie, I think they've been on the series for quite a while, so they knew all the tools and everything. They knew how to use the tools. So obviously, I was a newbie on that one, and so I was able to ask them if I was stuck or needed any help with the tools and all that.
After Tomb Raider Chronicles in 2000, what happened next to you? Did you leave core design afterwards? And what were your reasons or goals at that time?
So yeah, after Tomb Raider Last Revelation, there was Tomb Raider Chronicles, and both those projects took a year each. I was actually started. I caught German measles when I was a few years into the course. I think I went to court for about 10 years, and I caught German measles maybe 2 or 3 years in. At that time, it was quite it was quite painful. I had it for about 2 or 3 weeks. So it was quite painful. I remember I actually developed a condition called psoriasis at that time, and after a while, I realised that it was starting to affect my joints as well. So I was able to get Tomb Raider That's Revelation finished and Tomb Raider Chronicles was finished, but I was starting to struggle with my medication I've been put on, seeing the doctor and stuff like that, and I basically kind of being at the forefront working. There was a lot of pressure working on those games, and I did enjoy it. And it wasn't outrageous pressure because the tool set was there. We just had to get the levels done. But the next game after that was going to be Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness, which was I think the PlayStation 2 game. So they wanted everyone to be doing like proper next generation graphics and stuff like that. And basically, I just didn't feel at the time because I had problems with my health that I wasn't really up to that task at that time. So in the end, I decided that it just wasn't going to be for me. And I did hang around the core for a while, about another year or so. And I was trying to get a project management job, but in the end, they already had a couple of project managers, and they didn't. It just wasn't to be. So I ended up leaving and taking a bit of time off. So I went abroad. I went abroad for a while and did a bit of had a break from it all, basically. A break for a while, 6 months or so.
But later you did a localization of a game I read, Deep Water Adventures Diver in 2006. What were your tasks there?
Yeah, so basically, when I went on break, I went abroad. I went to Thailand for a while, and I stayed there, and I did a bit of diving while I was in. I went to Koh Tao and Koh Phanang, and did a diving course there for six months or so. I did like a PADI, open water, and then advanced diver training, and then eventually up to assistant instructor. And then when I came back, I was kind of like interested in doing a diving game, and so I did a bit of googling online, and I found this company who had done a diving game, which was called Diving Deep Water Adventures. Basically, they were just about finishing it off. So I just got a bit involved with them. I sent them an email and sent them a few pictures and even said, I'm really interested in diving. I think it's a great idea for a game. And so I got chatting with them, and then they said they were looking for a publisher. So I tried to find them a publisher here in the UK. I kind of got in touch with Codemasters and a couple of other companies to see what they thought. And I ended up helping them out with just doing a bit of kind of like translations and stuff. But in the end, it wasn't to be. I mean, they did give me a credit on the game, which was great of them. And they were, a nice bunch of people. We had a few nice conversations with them, but unfortunately, we weren't able to kind of progress the gaming idea of the game as much as we wanted to do.
Uh, the next 15 years, I did not find your name in games. Did you leave this scene 15 years, or what did you do until the VR experience later?
Yeah, so I say I went to university for a bit. I did some studying business management at university, so I spent a few years there. I was kind of like keeping an eye on things, and I ended up opting for. I decided to start up my own company, so I started up Triggerfish Studios, and um, basically we now kind of help people. Have a few employees who work for us from home, basically doing stuff there. And obviously, we have the company now called Triggerfish Games. But it has been a long road. It's taken a while to get to where it is today. But yeah, so basically, I'm now a manager and I have my own company, and we have like two virtual reality games under our belt now, which is B.o.W Water VR and the sequel to that, which is called B.o.W II VR. And we have, as well as that, we have a few people who work from home on various projects as well.
You mentioned this, you joined as a game designer with Bodies of Water in 2021. What motivated you to develop a VR game after such a long time?
Right. I mean, like I said, I was really interested in diving. I did diving as a sport. I got interested in it after I left core design. Went on holiday and did a few paddock courses. And at that time, I was thinking diving would be a great idea for a game. It's kind of got the old what's it? You know, the thrust field, the kind of gravity of it all. I don't know if you dive yourself, possibly. Have you dived yourself? You have to control your buoyancy, and it's kind of like got the feeling of the old game Thrust, which is the gravity side of things, and being able to change your height and stuff like that. So, and it was a game, a theme for a game that I was interested in. So when virtual reality came about, I kind of got me really interested in games again, and I thought, well, I'll give this one a go. And obviously, Unreal Engine was available as well. And the way things are today, with access to all the assets, graphical assets, and things like that, it's made things a lot easier to, there's a lot more things at your fingertips. Kind of like when I left core, you would have to do all the graphics. If you wanted next gen graphics, you'd basically have to make them yourself or get other team members to make them. Whereas these days, there's so much graphics available online, and the power of the engines these days as well. I mean, Unreal Engine is a really great engine. So it kind of got me interested. Virtual reality got me interested again, and so I've been spending, I think, maybe the last 6 or so years looking into that and developing our interactive VR menu system, which we have available online at B.o.W.II and also the B.o.W II VR as well. And then we just finished a sequel, which is B.o.W II VR, which is kind of like a version of that. So, but yeah, they're single-player adventure games. Obviously, the next thing to do would be to hopefully get into a multiplayer type situation as well. And that is something that we are considering, but whether or not we'd actually be able to do that or not, I don't know. But it's something that we do have. The idea is there, and we have the IPO now is there as well. So yeah, it is a possibility.
Are you involved in the Tomb Raider remastered versions?
I've been in touch with that. I think they were wanting some help with the marketing of that. They've given me a credit on the level design credit, but basically I haven't done any work on that. No, they've just taken the original levels and they've remastered them. So have heard from them, and I've done a bit of promo stuff on it. But other than that, I wasn't really involved with it at all. So I've been concentrating on doing my own thing and getting the games, putting everything into getting B.o.W VR up to scratch and finally released, which it has been in the last couple of months or so.
You did a lot of different things in your career. You started out as a graphic designer, worked as level designer, and so on. Which of these roles you like most?
Right. I mean, obviously, when I was young and uh, first met Derek, and that was an enjoyable time. We were kids, and the whole demo scene, everything like that, was a lot of fun. But I think now it's kind of having the Unreal Engine. I mean, when we worked on Ninja Shadow Dance, for example, we had to develop all our own editor and everything, and that was a real, basically just giving a copy of 3D Studio Max and having to sit in a room with a programmer and develop your own tools to create the game was probably the most challenging time of it all. But these days, having actual Unreal Engine and an engine that's been made specifically for making games or movies, stuff like that, and even though it is challenging and it is a complicated package, once you start getting used to it, it really is an enjoyable experience being able to kind of change things when you want to. And so I think now, obviously, it's the most exciting time ever in games development, and having access to these tools and everything at your fingertips for literally no cost at all is an amazing situation to be in. So obviously, the kids these days are very envious of them. Being able to be young and have all of this stuff available to them is an excellent opportunity. So,
What was the company you liked most working for?
okay, so I'll always be grateful to Core Design. They did give us a job, an employed job. We enjoy working for Codemasters as well, but kind of being a freelancer and fighting for contracts, it can be you never really know if you're going to be able to pay the bills the next week and stuff like that. So being in an employed position is obviously where you want to be, and Core Design did do that for both myself and Derek. So I'll always be grateful to them for that. But yeah.
And what was the project you were involved in you loved most?
Which ones have I enjoyed working on the most? I mean, obviously, it's great to be working on the project that's recognised and a huge success. So that was obviously the biggest success of all the games I worked on would obviously have to be Tomb Raider. But again, it's kind of like it can be a curse as well, because once you've worked on a game that has been so successful, it's kind of difficult to fry that up with anything. So whereas before, kind of like Tempest 2000 machines a huge hit, and then obviously Fantastic Dizzy was a big success as well. But to work on a game that was as massively received as Tomb Raider was, kind of like everything after that, because it seems like it's always going to be second best. So it's kind of difficult to think how to follow that up. So I think now I have followed it up, even though it hasn't been particularly well received. It's still early days, I think, with Bodies of Water. And obviously, if we are able to do a multiplayer version as well, then it could turn into something that is extra special. Whether or not that actually happens and we're able to do multiplayer stuff as well, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad time, even though I still have health problems and things like that. I am enjoying running my own companies. I'm enjoying still being involved in games, and it's possible that things could still blossom on from here. So.
You mentioned some development times, but what was the longest or the shortest development time for a game you?
Ooh, I say, yeah, 6 months. I mean, is a pretty quick time to make a game these days. But Battle Valley was really a small game. It's only one level, but I remember at the time because we were so young. I think when you're 14 or whatever, 6 months seems like forever. So, but these days, yeah, I mean, making a game in 6 months seems like a dream. But turning Tomb Raider around in a year was pretty good because obviously we had a good team and being able to do that in a year from start to finish was an enjoyable experience and something that's difficult to replicate. If you don't have the tools and the team and everything in place, you really struggle to do it. So, but yeah, I think doing a game in a year or less than a year. I mean, maybe on mobile you could do it, but I mean, doing mobile games, well, that doesn't really interest me. I'd rather go for like a big 3D type game, is really where my interests are. But even though with so many graphics being available these days, kind of like people just want the best graphics. So, I mean, obviously we are indie and we're not doing AAA stuff, but I mean, it's still a game is a game, and whether it's got fancy graphics or not, as long as the game is there and plays the same, then it is what it is. And if you want everything to be the best of the best, then it takes a lot of investment, as you know. So,
Were there a lot of unpublished games or projects in your career?
there were a few, especially when we were younger. Myself and my friends there, we did a few kind of. We were at arcades, spent a lot of time in the arcades playing games like Rustan Saga and R-Type Outrun, things like that. So I think we're mainly interested in kind of Rustan Saga type games. We did a few prototypes for games called Demon Slayer and kind of. But obviously, getting the game from start to finish, it's easy enough to come up with an idea and do a few little pictures, but actually getting a game from start to finish, actually making a finished game at the end of it, is a real challenge. And so, yeah, it does take a lot of time. I know a lot of people these days are trying to make games, especially with Steam and stuff like that. And so there are a lot more titles out there because it is easier for people to do these days. But even so, with all these tools at your fingertips, it is still a challenge, I think, to make a decent game.
What were the most important people you met in your career while working on games?
So yeah, I think obviously my friend Derek, who I first met in Bristol, he still lives here in Derby, and I'm kind of near Derby as well. But we've kind of drifted apart. Like I said, I'm using Unreal Engine, and the last time I spoke to him and his friends there, they were using Unity Engine. So kind of they've been doing their thing, and I've been doing mine. I know they're still about, but he's obviously been one of the main people in my life, and friends that I've made through him, Dan Scott and Alan Lucas, people I met at Core Design or Codemasters. So, but obviously, it's kind of like a long road, and people grow up, and people get married, and people move to different countries, things like that. So, it's kind of trying to stay involved in the industry and keep in touch with people as well. It can be challenging as well. People go off in different branches and things. So, but they are kind of still. I know that a lot of people are still around, but they're kind of working on their own projects and stuff like that. So,
After so many years, do you still enjoy playing yourself, or do you play your own games yourself still today?
I do play games somewhat. I think the last game I played really was Half-Life Alyx, and that kind of got me hyped to do a virtual reality game as well. But yeah, you do when you're developing a game. Obviously, you spend a lot of time playing your own games because you have to kind of test the levels and test things are working okay. So I have spent a lot of time doing that. I do play with games on Steam. Um, but yeah, basically spend a lot of time doing web design work and levels and stuff, and obviously a lot of the assets and things like that. Bodies of water. We've been working with people online, but who are abroad or buying asset packs. So that's basically how this game has been developed.
Is retro hardware or software or games, are they still in your possession today? Do you have a collection of the games you were involved?
Yeah, of course. I have a big boxes and boxes of things in the basement. So I have magazines and things like that. I have copies, but yeah, it's kind of like my. It's all in storage. A lot of it's in storage. But I have things online, like I have the website, and so. But yeah, it's basically my memories and mementos and achievements, and so yeah. Obviously, keep hold of that kind of stuff. That is just what makes you who you are, I guess. Going on to all that, yeah.
Many classic games you worked on enjoy cult status today. How does it feel to see games like Dizzy Tempest 2000 Tomb Raider still being played and appreciated by fans decades later till now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great feeling. I mean, it is amazing, really. I think with the emulator scene, there's a big emulator scene now with all the consoles and things like that. So a lot of people are getting access to those games these days, and they are really enjoyable games to play. 2000, I think, is a really great game to play if you enjoy the short blast type things, and it's not like a huge adventure which you have to spend hours on, but you can still really enjoy yourself. And yeah, I mean, I still get people who do get in touch with me these days and asking how I'm doing, how things are getting on. So it is great to think. Obviously, there's always going to be a new generation of gamers coming into games who are interested in games and characters and everything like that. So it's kind of like there's always new people coming into it who are always going to be interested in that stuff.
If someone wants to have more information about you, about your work, what you did, what you are doing, is there a place in the net, for example, where we can have a look?
Yeah, so basically, everything's available online at w.w.triggerfishgames.com. So if you want to be interested in virtual reality development or getting into any of that, we've got a tool on there called the Interactive VR Menu System, which would be a great place to start, very low cost. Obviously, our engine is totally free. So, and then basically we've got like a bit of information on there and links to our games, latest games, and things like that. So that'd be, if they were interested in getting into games with virtual reality, especially, then I would say that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, and then we have to thank you to go a bit through your life with us. And if something special happens in the future with new projects, with old things, do not hesitate to contact us again. Thanks a lot for doing the interview. Thanks, Joby.